Welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for coming on, mate. It's going to be a good one here, a bit different than what we're normally doing. Previous people we've had on are mainly government, deep dives into what they're doing and stuff like that. So having someone come on talk a little bit about physics and stuff like that is a bit of a change. So hopefully everyone enjoys this. It's going to be a pretty good episode, I think. Do you want to give like a little bit of an intro, if that's all right? Like who you are, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. Well, my name's Jeremy, and I'm from, Boston area. I'm living near Providence now, but I got into this because I read, a book in it was a bunch of different stuff I did in high school. I read a book by Richard Feynman's autobiography, and he worked at Los Alamos on top secret projects like the Manhattan Project, and he worked on all this, classified physics stuff. So I've always been interested in what the heck is going on in these secret programs? And when I heard about like that Bob Lazar stuff on Unsolved Mysteries back in the 90s, man, I was just like, I was just hooked on all and X-Files. I mean, we grew up with all this stuff in our generation, Independence Day. I'm 38, but Independence Day in the 90s when that movie came out, and they had that scene with the scientist in the underground lab, and he's like, this thing crashed out at Roswell, and all this stuff was in the movies. It was all built into the culture, even if so it's there in the psyche, it's there in your mindset, and it's always fascinated me. It's always been like the one thing I'm like, why is not more people interested in talking about this? And so I created my channel and to bring those kind of people together. I started it in 2008, came up with that name, Alien Scientists, and it's kind of stuck. Yeah, and it was a good name.
Yeah, for sure. Has anyone tried to buy it off you?
I had a fight for the website at one point in time with a guy grabbed up alienscientist.com and was trying to, charge me like $5,000 for it. And I'm like, I can't afford that, man. I think I forget what he eventually settled for, but it was I was like, come on, man. And I don't know. It's interesting the people you meet along the way, but I got it and now it's mine. And I'm glad. Thank you for that, my friend. By the way,
shout out.
No hard feelings or nothing, man. It's all in the past, all water under the bridge. We're in a different place now in the future, and hopefully we'll be in a different place in 10 years from now. Once more stuff comes out, because it's just crazy when you're talking about this stuff and you feel like you're the only one and that nobody else is listening or cares, and then 10 years later, these documents get declassified and you're like, I was talking about metamaterials and these types of, this types of technology, quasi crystals and spin glasses. I've been talking about all this. And then the documents come out. It's like, see, told you so. and so then it's good because you start meeting more people, through the process. It's really interesting because it's like a whole section of history that I'm finding that it's just lost because of classification and black programs and stuff. And it's like these people are all like in their 90s now and they're dying and it's great we're getting the opportunity to even Mark McCandlish, he died a couple of weeks ago. He was in his in his 60s. So it's great that we're getting these people to speak out and go on record and tell their stories and kind of and then submit to a technical Q&A, because you always see these guys go on and talk in front of a crowd of UFO people, but you can really sort the ones out that are willing to come on in front of a bunch of physicists and engineers and answer technical questions. That sort of sorts the weed out from the chaff.
Yeah. He's a very interesting case, that guy, Mark, because he like delved in deep to try and figure out how the stuff worked. And this was back when there was no one trying to do it. Well, outside of government, obviously, but yeah, no one in the civilian world trying to do it. And here he is giving out blueprints of the things that he saw and like the breakdowns and stuff. Like that's nuts. From for any of you that don't know who he is, please go Google him and watch some YouTube presentations and stuff. He is, I would probably say legit, more legit than Bob Lazar, that's for sure. If I can,
Yeah, a lot of people, they group him in with Bob Lazar, and he was around the same time, and they were both speaking at the same kind of conferences and stuff. So it's kind of weird, you know. You look at Bob Lazar, and he's gotten this out to huge audiences, but look at the impact that it's had on the scientific community, and it's not always positive. I sent you a video earlier that just was released by Fermi Labs, really scathing, you know, dig on anti-gravity that he gives in that, you know, short 9-minute video that he says he calls it complete at one point. No discussion of anti-gravity would be complete without. I'm like, really? You're saying that this is complete, you know, like so yeah, I'm putting together why don't we show that video and talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Should be able to load it up. It's interesting to say that, you know, they know everything about this thing, which, you know, we don't know anything about. Like, there's almost no research on it whatsoever. So it's a bit.
Well, he does give he does talk for about 3 minutes, from about 5 minutes to 8 minutes, right before that, and at the end of the video, he talks about, you know, he gives the whole lab. Right there was the lab. He shows off Fermi Lab and what they're doing, and he gives a whole history of you know, what modern physics understands about gravity. But it's a real short introduction. He mentions the equivalence principle and a couple other key points, and talks about what antimatter is, and mentions a few experiments, but he doesn't go into like depth on, you know, there's still questions about what gravity is that go back to the, you know, the birth and foundations of quantum gravity with you know, he mentions Einstein, but he doesn't mention the people that Einstein worked with, like John Archibald Wheeler, who of course came up with the idea of quantum foam and the idea of quantum non-locality. Very peculiar notions in physics, and not really comfortable notions and easy notions for a lot of mathematicians or physicists to deal with, because it just opens up a whole new understanding of the universe if it's woven together in some of these ways, because which they're not easy to deal with for our physicists and our mathematicians, but they leave open doors and windows to more possibilities for really cool technologies and stuff. And I don't know, it's just there's a couple things. Why don't you hit play and we'll start from the beginning, and we can analyze this if you want.
Yeah. Break it down a little bit. Yeah, we'll give it a go for a couple of minutes. Hopefully I don't bore the people too much.
One of the most obvious observations about gravity is the simple aphorism: what goes up must come down. It's just how gravity works. It pulls things downwards. But then there's this thing some people talk about called anti-gravity.
Does it pull things downwards? I thought it pushed things downwards.
I don't know if there's a pull.
Is there a difference?
But
I thought it was a push. I'm not a physicist though, so don't take that as anything.
Is it real? Well, no.
We're nitpicking.
At least probably not. But respected scientists are looking into it, which means that we need to know more.
We need to know more.
Yeah, which means it's legit now. So now we actually have to look into it.
We need to know more. What's the truth about anti-gravity?
Would be easy to define. It should be the opposite of gravity, something that would push you away from the Earth, for example. But the term
that what he just said there, that seems to be a very common thing when you're talking about anti-gravity, like engines and stuff like that. And I think it was your one of your episodes, and one of the guys was saying that that's a bad way to think about it. It's not so much that it's the opposite of gravity; it's that it's just bending it so that it works differently in a way. It's like thinking that it's complete opposite is it's making you think about it the complete wrong way, and you're not understanding it properly.
It is. It's totally. He sets the whole thing up with a weird way of thinking about gravity, and it's so naive. And we'll keep going. We'll keep going with this. We're gonna break.
Anti-gravity is used in many ways, including dodgy things like explaining how UFOs fly, which is, kind of silly.
it's kind of
However,
silly. It
researchers
wasn't
at CERN
wasn't
are
silly
investigating
like
the possibility of real anti-gravity using antimatter. And yeah, got to admit, that sounds totally cool. I'll talk about this very real science in a moment, but first, I think it would be fun to spend a little more time on the silly stuff.
oh god.
So let's talk about some of the ideas you
Setting
can
it up.
easily find if you surf
Right.
the internet. The most common is when people imagine that some sort of electrical current will overcome gravity. They go by names like gravitoelectrics or sometimes electrogravitics, just to change it up. Then there is another term you'll find called gravitomagnetics. Now, first of all, these are all made-up terms. They all sound very sciencey and all, but they're not. And furthermore, different people will use the same term for different phenomena.
So he can go look up Nathan Inan. He presented at the Estes Park conference, and it's INAN, Nathan Inan. And you can go look up. He gives a whole breakdown of what those terms mean and that particular approach to understanding gravity. So I won't get into it any more than that, but people can go look that up if they really wanted to see those terms defined instead of just being like, okay, this is just nonsense. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're just going to talk about the one theory and approach to gravity that I want, that I think is right, and we're not going to talk about anyone else's ways of thinking about gravity that we still don't really know or understand, and that I still don't. He proves that he doesn't. He's so ignorant of it because he doesn't even touch on like normal person who's into gravity research, just gravity in general, gravitational physics, who's up on the literature, is going to know way more than this guy presented in this. This is like 100-year-old stuff. Like it's literally this
is coming straight from Fermilab.
It's freshman level. Straight from Fermilab, and it's freshman level understanding of it. Keep going. Let's break down how naive this guy is, because it's just ridiculous.
Do you think as well is because if he does say it or does look into it, then he's going to get ridiculed, and he's just trying to avoid that ridicule amongst his.
I think I'm going to explain what I think happened and break this down for people. This guy's name is Don Lincoln. Keep going. Someone asked what his name was. Keep.
So that should tell you something about how seriously you should take them.
Oh.
But here are some specific ideas. In the 1990s, a researcher claimed that rotating superconducting disks would shield 2% of gravity. Another person has claimed that parallel plate capacitors can shield gravity. Then there is the claim that flowing dense fluids and pipes.
So he won't even mention the researchers' names. Okay. So one of the things is, if you want to respect science, and you should respect scientists by at least, citing their work as a source.
Yeah.
If you're going to cite their source and talk about that source, you should cite the source. He says another researcher you won't even name. That guy, the last experiment, that video, I believe, is Richard Bandurek. He presented at our APEC conference, and we have a technical Q&A with him in front of a team full of scientists. And I'll have him on again if we can get more, physicists on here that think they're smarter than us to ask better questions, then you're welcome. That's kind of what we opened up and what we're trying to do here. But it's hard when you won't even reference or give recognition to the research that's being done. And then you show that you don't understand it, because if you had read Eugene Podkletnov's paper, who's the researcher in the 90s that came up with the rotating superconductors, you realize it's more than just rotating superconductors. It was a bilayer disk, which he talks about in part 4 and 5 of his interview, which you can find on my channel. And there's also an applied radio frequency field. So those bilayers and these kind of two-dimensional layers appear a lot in these experiments, and a lot in the types of environments that are conducive to these anomalous effects, which this guy claims. Again, we'll keep watching it. Let's keep watching it, because he just so ignorant of the actual experiments and how close he is to real phenomenon. He says that, like, we're looking for ways to create this effect, but we're looking for things that break outside of our normal understanding, but then you're not giving serious attention to the experiments. You're saying it's just rotating superconductors, and you're not talking about the layered materials and these other kinds of things that are going on, which I'll get to the science
wrapped around the torus will create a repulsive gravitational field. Well, you'll even find people who claim to have made machines using these principles. None of these ideas have ever been replicated by other researchers. Scientific claims that haven't been replicated should make you go,
Okay, pause.
And of course, no discussion of...
So this is funny because some of these experiments take a lot of money to replicate. NASA did a replication, but just like Don here, they left out the bilayer and they applied radio frequency fields. George Hathaway and Blair Cleveland did a replication, and their replication, apparently they published on this, and they got positive results according to their replication. So there's still controversy out there over this, and it's not getting the funding it deserves to kind of experiment these 2D layered environments and layered superconductors and layered quasicrystals and metamaterials and all these types of two-dimensional materials, and how they're perfect environments for to host what are called surface plasmons or surface plasmon polaritons. And when you get polaritons, that's basically like pulling antimatter out of the vacuum. It's like antimatter on demand. So let's keep going, because he asks for all this stuff, but he's not looking for it apparently, or he doesn't know it's there.
Anti-gravity would be complete without touching on the UFO enthusiast community. Some members claim that the U.S. government is in possession of a crashed UFO or two. The most famous is the supposed crash of a flying saucer at Roswell, which the story says was transferred to Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And who can forget?
At least he's done his research there to find out the correct details.
Right.
At least that at a facility called...
Yeah. Like he knows that. He knows about Hangar 18. So
Right.
he's done.
Doesn't know about the blue room or
not far from the famed Area 51. That the U.S. has not one but 7 captured flying saucers.
Of course, it mixes it. You got to mix it with Bob Lazar too.
Those would all be.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Don't forget that John Lear is the one that said on George Knapp's Mystery. Was it Mystery? No, it was On the Record with George Knapp was the show, and it was before Bob Lazar, and he said that there was 11 discs in the hangar, not 9. So you can go back and watch that. I have a clip of that in my Bob Lazar parody documentary that I put together. It's very poorly.
Maybe they crashed some. There was only a couple left when Bob went there.
I have a whole website that I built called boblazardebunk.com because I just wasted 10 years like researching and trying to prove that case, and it was just not true. And none of the physics are right. It was all predicted in a magazine article that was published like the same month he came out with his story, but he didn't talk about the element 115 in part until like later. And you can trace it back to like he figured out that element 115 hadn't been discovered at the time. He knew it would be discovered, and then he tries to use that, like the fact that it was discovered is like see, I predicted this and it happened. Like I'm a brilliant scientist, and then some idiots give him the credibility for that. And it's just nuts how this story has caused so much damage. It's people like tout it as like, well, it's getting attention. Yeah, but it's getting negative attention. Look at the way the physics community is interpreting this stuff. It's bad enough. This is the way these scientists think about, the Roswell and the Hangar 18 stories. Yeah, sure. It's cool as heck to talk about. And my stream count goes up through the roof when I start, doing videos on that kind of stuff. But, it's not going to convince the physics community, as we see. It's not going to convince guys at Fermi Labs that this is real, or that that they should take this seriously.
Just quickly there on the predicting element 115. I've got a lot of people that don't understand how he could have done that. Can you just quickly explain how simple it is to actually predict an element that we haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, it's just the proton number Z. So you just add, it's just arithmetic. You could literally say, all right, well, we haven't, I predicted it's element 125, and then it would be discovered. The thing is that he predicted a stable isotope that had these miraculous anti-gravity generation properties. That's kind of like his unobtainium that he created to make the story fulfilled. All right, it wasn't like this lots of other things predicted this. It used to be I have a 1970, remember the textbooks from the school used to have the predicted elements in the chemistry book and from your high school science book.
I don't remember that.
I used to have it. Well, if it depends on how deep you were into science, I guess. But I have copies of books published in '79. I have a 1979 textbook, which has element 115 in there. It predicts it, and that it's just adding numbers. It's just, it's a table. It's just adding numbers, and they were in there with its predicted atomic weight and its predicted, all properties and everything based on what they knew categorically from the periodic table of elements. And all these things are predicted, going back. I think I found a paper on it going back to 79, which has the island of stability. So you can find the stuff about island of stability going back in the literature before Bob Lazar, and he took it all and put it all together to be part of the story. And none of it is anywhere near the real anti-gravity research which is being done, which we talked about, that rotating superconductors, rotating mercury. They tried a bunch of these different things because the idea was that gravity had an analog. Moving masses were believed to create a gravitomagnetic field. And this is not just like crack scientists think. NASA had a thing called Gravity Probe B, where they literally put a space probe in orbit to measure the gravitomagnetic field of the Earth, the flow of the Earth around the sun. Like basically the whatever the wake is that the Earth was leaving as it moved through space. And
so how was actually warping space itself?
Yes, and those that's all like that's called Gravity Probe B. And so, anyways, you want to that move, I don't know, we can go deeper into that thing, but there's so much that he doesn't. Then I kind of want to make a clarification, right? Because he talks about the electrogravitics and gravitoelectrics, right? So there's a lot of misinterpreted coronal wind or ion wind that's created in these experiments, and it's caused a lot of controversy in this. But a lot of real credible and serious scientists have worked to eliminate all sources of ion wind, do this experiments in pure vacuum, and they've reported that they still get a certain type of effect with certain situations and certain types of materials, and it's might be indication of an easier way to produce antimatter or antimatter type effects, if that's indeed if that's what's being produced briefly in these experiments via surface plasmon polaritons that are pulling negative mass or negative energies out of the vacuum. Even if it's briefly for a moment of time, which causes this impulse that's unexplained in these experiments, that these, all these scientists are saying, no, for 100 years it's been, no, it's just misinterpreted ion wind. But we still have, M Drive. We still have DARPA contracts going to guys like Mike McCulloch, and still have articles in Popular Mechanics. And and Roger Scheuer are coming on my podcast the other week to say, no, you haven't debunked this. Like, I'm sorry. There's lots of people who have seen this kind of stuff and are working on it. Credible, serious scientists like James Woodward, who holds the Estes Park conference. It's one of the biggest propulsion conferences out there, and kind of was the inspiration when COVID happened. They couldn't do the conference at Estes Park. A beautiful call, right? So what they did instead is they hosted it on Zoom. And when we said, how they're holding these propulsion conferences on Zoom, let's just host our own conference and have it instead of once a year. We'll have it every friggin' week until we get, we have all this downtime. We're all stuck inside. Let's figure out propulsion. Let's nail the physics of this down, and let's have a battle royale to get the best gravity scientists and the best physicists to come in and present and really school my audience on, what the heck is gravity, and how do we defeat it? How do we find physics to beat this? So I think
brilliant what you're doing too, because it's not only showing what's out there, but it's inspiring people that are coming up, and they get to see it and be like, oh shit, there's this whole world out there that I can get involved in and actually try and find this alternate propulsion. It's impressive, man. it's so inspiring to everyone as well. Like it's such a
I hope
good
so,
thing that
man.
you're
I like to think so.
Oh, it is.
When I see a
It
video
definitely
like
is.
that come out, it's like, look, we're either doing something seriously wrong or we're doing something really right. Because there's a reason they put a video like that out, and it's I don't know. It just needs to get the credibility and the seriousness. I think that in order to be recognized by those people, but again, you have the fiction. It's not far from the fictional representation, right? Where in Star Trek, it's this drunk guy, Zefram Cochrane, who's just like, he's just drinking half the time, but he's the guy that puts the warp drive together and figures it out, despite all the high horse academics and stuff. I didn't see that, but we should. I want to play that one part there because he goes on and then there's a couple more things that are real funny that I wanted to comment on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Amazing if they were true, but they're not. Now, I know that some of you will disagree with me on topics of UFOs and captured flying saucers and anti-gravity technology, and others will claim that I'm lying to hide the truth. But to quote Carl Sagan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I say,
but to quote that guy that everyone loves,
yes,
prove it, and make it worth your while.
Wait, hold up. Can I stop a second? Can I also quote Carl Sagan? Yeah. How about absence of evidence is not evidence of absence?
Exactly,
just because I don't have the evidence, just because I don't have proof that there's a hangar down at Wright-Patterson full of alien bodies and parts doesn't mean that it's not there. It still could be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's use our imagination, man. And rather than, I don't know, I try to that's why I turn it around. It's like, yeah, who cares if it's not true? Let's use our imagination to inspire the next generation of kids to actually engineer this stuff and think outside the box and not, oh, come on and keep going. This is good because this gets better with
gravity device. There's a prize waiting you worth €1 million, which is over $1 million. It's called the Godia Award, and I put.
Where is Fermilab? That's in America, yeah.
No, they have one in I think in America, but it's mainly over at the UK, over in Europe, and so it's a big European thing. So it's €1 million, right? So 1 million. Right. So how much per year? How much does Fermilab get in funding? It's in the tens of billions, I believe.
Why would it be so low?
In order to discover so Fermilab's not CERN, right? So I'm gonna get this all straight so I don't make this mistake. But I just want to look up how much funding they got and what discoveries they made. And imagine if I was just listen, guys, all your physics is fake, and okay, their budget's 546 million was their 2019 budget. All right, so there's a €1 million prize, right? So 1/500th of the funding, 500th of the funding that they got in 2019 is available for the prize. For the most important physics discovery of the entire century, of all time, anti-gravity we're talking about here, right? Is a $1 million prize. But they have an annual budget of 546 million. Oh. You see a problem here?
It's a bit fucking sus. It's a bit sus. It's this thing that could change the human course forever. And we'll give $1 million for it. What the fuck?
This should be $1 million. There should be a dozen $1 million grants out there just for groups like me, so I can apply, and they'll be like, "Look, we think you're deserving. I'll give you $1 million, and you can. And if your team can do it, then do it and see what you can do with it. Just come up with a plan and an idea what you're going to spend the money on and what you're going to do. And there should be.
It seems like a fucking joke. It seems like an insult, really. Not even
it is. It's laughable. Can you believe that? The hubris. It's well, listen, you're not doing real science, so we're not going to give you any funding. But if you do somehow make a breakthrough in your physics research, we have 1/500th of our annual budget that we'll give you for your life's work. Think about that.
It's pretty fucking stupid, man.
Keep going.
Fuck.
Keep going on this.
Yeah, let's keep doing it.
Put a link to the award in the video description if you believe you have developed an anti-gravity device. We live in a world in which it is possible to make outlandish claims that then spread like wildfire across the internet. But that doesn't make them true, no more than the one I heard the other day, which was that the Fermilab's famous Dr. Don knew too much, so he was neutralized and replaced with a high-tech android using advanced alien
this is
technology.
so cringe, man.
And there's no truth to that.
Just for anyone watching, this is legit on their official fucking YouTube. Okay.
Oh my god, dude.
Actually, what they uploaded.
None at all. I'm not saying that anti-gravity is absolutely impossible. Admittedly,
oh,
it's
there
not
you go.
something
He
that is
saves
currently
himself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
save my hide, right?
Yeah, out of 9 minutes, there's a 2-second bit where he's speaking truth.
Let me just trash this whole thing. I'm just not going to say it's impossible.
Yeah.
Just going to say we're not going to fund you or
there's
take you
instances
seriously at all.
that aren't described by currently accepted physics theories. So I'd be thrilled if one
Oh,
of
they
these
are.
out.
See,
It's
pause
just
that.
one of them have
See,
so far.
you caught that. I'm sorry. I'm talking over him, but he said these are just phenomena that aren't like described by currently accepted physics theories. You don't even know the theories.
Yeah.
You know, you don't even cite any of the theories. Like, are you kidding me?
Doesn't even name the scientists.
You don't even name the scientists.
Bullshit.
You've
Yeah.
done zero research. You threw this. You threw a hacked video together in like 5 minutes after watching Bob Lazar on Joe Rogan, probably. And this is like, I have to stress the damage that Bob Lazar is causing to the credibility of this community. Oh, keep going.
Yeah,
man.
it's ruining it.
On the other hand, there are a few groups of serious and respected researchers who are looking into what one might call anti-gravity. Basically, they ask, if matter falls down, does antimatter fall up? These experiments are done at CERN, Fermilab's sister laboratory in Europe. Now, both laboratories know how to make antimatter. Making antiprotons or anti-electrons is pretty easy with the equipment we have. And Fermilab once had the world's premier antiproton production facility. But neither antiprotons nor anti-electrons are suitable because they have electric charge. And the electric force is enormously stronger than gravity.
Pause. So he's like, oh, we get the best labs for creating antimatter in the world, except that it only creates charged antimatter, which is completely unusable. So, all right, great. Nice brag there, buddy. But you didn't mention Kay Kirsch or at the University of Zurich. At the group there with Scherns at the University of Zurich. I can send you a link to this if you look it up.
Yeah, chuck it in there.
Then there's also he doesn't mention the Scherns research, which is they're doing or Daniel M. Kaplan's the other guy. Sorry, I was trying to remember his name. There's another physicist, and he's doing research. I believe he's in the UK. I'm not exactly sure. Daniel M. Kaplan with a K. And he's doing, they're both doing research, on muonium, which is anti-muons. And it's an exotic atom that forms with an electron and an anti-muon, which the charge is there and they don't annihilate because anti-muons only annihilate with muons. And this is actually, he's at Illinois Institute of Technology. So yeah, Daniel Kaplan. So both these researchers are doing experiments and doing this same type of, they have the same question, does antimatter fall up or down, right?
Yeah.
So, but he doesn't cover them even. It's just like, he just talks about, Fermi labs, but the brag's like, all right, we have all this equipment, we have the best labs and scientists, but I won't mention any other labs and scientists that are working with muonium because it's much easier to work with than the crap that we have because it's muons and they're much more rare and they don't annihilate with everything around it. You know what I mean? So keep going.
Yeah, let's keep it up.
Strength difference depends on whether we're talking about electrons or protons, but ballpark, the electric force is like 10 to the 40 times stronger than gravity. 10 to the 40 is a big number. That means if you want to study the gravitational behavior of antimatter, that you need to shield your equipment incredibly well from stray electromagnetic fields, or it will screw up your experiment. So, Researchers at CERN get around that by combining an antiproton with an anti-electron, making anti-hydrogen, which is electrically neutral. It's a clever solution that sounds easy, but is pretty tricky. And the various different experimental groups at CERN do it in different ways. Then the different experiments either launch their anti-hydrogen upward or sideward, or just release it from rest and look to see what happens. Does the antimatter fall down?
It's the same idea, but they use muons instead. These other guys are using muons instead, and it's just a better experiment all around, and than the one that Fermilabs is trying to do. And any kind of little bit of charge or how do you know, like any kind of stray current or charge is going to mess up that measurement or that experiment. So whatever. Can you fast forward it to this is his whole bit on that thing, and he's got some other videos on this stuff if you really want to listen to this guy, but go past the equivalence principle stuff. Go back right about 7 minutes and 45 seconds. 7 minutes and 40 seconds, something like that, right around there.
Gravitational mass is the negative of inertial mass. If so, that would be a very big deal. And it is indeed possible that antimatter falls up. We're going to have to wait for the experimental results to be announced. Don't expect anything for many months, probably a year. But it's coming, and the measurement is going to be super epic. This is real science.
No, this is
real
real
science. On the other hand,
science.
bringing this back to the scientifically irresponsible side of the anti-gravity conversation, even if the CERN experiments find that
I also, just quickly, I also like how they've got all the equations in the background as well, just to make it more sciencey, even though none of them are ever referenced to.
Antimatter falls up. That doesn't help us with making gravity shields in our house, nor does it really explain the claims of the UFO community. Antimatter is exceedingly dangerous and outrageously hard to make, and that would still be true even with very advanced technology. And it's also still true that magnets, superconductors.
That was like key, because it's this whole part at the end is just like he doesn't know the technology, doesn't mention the technology. He's not up on it at all. He thinks it's all Bob Lazar, and he thinks it's Eugene Podkletnov and Bandurek, which is just one small little, but he doesn't even look into that or mention the scientist's name. So like, yeah, just rewind it a second and then go back and we'll finish it off. And
with very advanced technology. And it's also still true that magnets, superconductors, capacitors, and spinning toroids don't cancel gravity. Sorry, guys. But keep an eye out for the CERN results. It's going to be awesome. Hi, guys. If you like the video, please be sure to...
Yes. So I'm working on like a more condensed response to this. It took us 30 minutes to get through that. I'm sorry. I apologize for that, wasting all that time. But it's just funny. It's funny. Well, he gave me a perfect excuse to like break down all this stuff and go over it. It's like, oh, how would I present this to like the physicists at Fermilab? And what if my professor sees this video and he sends it to me? I want like a response so I can be like, no, this guy's not on it, man. He's not into it. He's not onto the 2D layers and the surfaces and the surface plasmon polaritons and that scheme for generating antimatter or negative mass. These are some interesting stuff, and I think like guys like this that are gonna be looking back in 20 years, or their kids are gonna be looking back from their flying cars and saying, like, oh, God. It's pathetic, man. They don't fund it. There's no funding for this type of research. It's laughable. And I think that's part of what this. So there's an event going on. I don't know if you know about this. My friend, this guy Luis Jimenez started. He's got a channel called the UFO Celebrity Review podcast, and he started up this initiative to do the big phone home, where we're all going to try and contact our senators and get them serious about this topic. And it's just, Lazar is crap, man, because it takes the conversation backwards. So now you have to work backwards to backpedal through all that crap to get to a solid standpoint to argue this to where you can get anywhere with it. You know, you can't just, you know, say like, oh, you're that's why I put that. You saw my UAP briefing, right? You said did you watch the whole thing or did you get through it?
Yeah, I've watched it a couple times now. Yeah, listened to it all.
What did you think?
I just want to comment. I thought that was an awesome brief. Just before we go down that though, there's a comment that I just chucked up on the screen there, talking more shit on Bob. And every time Rogan was asking him a question, he was like, "Oh, I've got a migraine. I can't remember the details." Every time there's a tough question. And I think you're right. I think that when someone like that does come out and they have all these extraordinary claims, but they're full of shit, it completely degrades the entire conversation of people like yourself that are actually looking into alternate energy, alternate propulsions, you know? And it just kind of demeans the entire fucking industry just for some dickhead to make a couple of dollars, which I'm sure he would have fucking done from the fucking documentary or whatever else he's got going on. So,
well, I mean, another thing too is they don't realize he you know what Bob Lazar did in Las Vegas before he was, you know, an Area 51 physicist? He's a con man, and I don't know
what he was doing for work.
Well, he ran a photo processing business and stuff, but he was arrested for pandering and ran a brothel. You know? Yeah, I'm not kidding. It was it wasn't
brothels, you know?
It wasn't called the Honeysuckle Ranch, but no, he wasn't just doing that, man. He was a pimp, literally. He was literally a pimp, and he set up he set up the first surveillance systems. He had like this brothel, and he was setting up a camera system and filming the Johns, and then using the film as his blackmail. So he's blackmailing people with the videos of them sleeping with the prostitutes afterwards and stuff. So it was actually, I think it was in a part of town that wasn't legal, or there was something like brothels are legal in most parts of Vegas, but it wasn't legal there, but he was running it there.
He is not the type of person I think of when I think of brothel owner or pimp. He was probably the last person.
But he was like one of the first guys to know how to use the internet, and that's how they were setting up the Johns. They had a website where they go on and you could pick your, date for the night.
Damn. Ahead of the curve.
So it's just crazy that people believe this guy, and he's like the front runner, and nobody knows about like any of that. But he never went. He said he went to MIT or Caltech, and nothing has ever come out to prove any of that. All his physics has been debunked, and it's clearly not changing anyone's minds in the physics community. And it's also just a huge distraction from the real stuff at this point, man. It's kind of crazy to see that how it was used in that video is like it was the pivot point, man. They just grinded on that one, element 115 and
with saying that he didn't go to any of the schools he claimed. It's quite possible though that the American government can remove those articles of information that would prove that. That is a very easily done thing by the government. They have a lot of fucking power. Have you looked into seeing if I'm an Australian, so I get to kind of watch you guys from the outside and sit back and.
You think they could literally how they say all your classmates that saw you and that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Have you contacted to see if is there any classmates who said he was there?
So there's been a number of researchers who looked into this to see if it would be possible, to like just erase somebody's history like that. And there's no classmates that remember him from any of these schools. His professor, he was asked on one time, all right, Rachel, Nevada, he used to give live Q&As. He doesn't give live Q&As. He has to they're all controlled questions and interviews now. It's really crazy. We have one live interview at Rachel, Nevada in 1993, and Tom Mahood got up and asked him, can you name some of your professors from Caltech or MIT so we can try to rebuild your educational history? He named two people on the spot. He said Dr. Hosefield and Dr. Duxler. And we traced down Dr. Hosefield was his high school physics and science teacher, and Dr. Duxler was his physics and electronics professor at Pierce Junior College in Woodland Hills, California, where he has records of him going and taking classes there, and he was in Dr. Duxler's class at Pierce Junior College. So at the same time, he was allegedly attending MIT, according to his timeline too. So it's been.
So he's just straight up a fucking con man.
It's been like beat to death, man. There's no working around it. I'm sorry, people, man. It's like I know the information's boring. It's a lot harder to go through all the stuff on boblazardebunk.com and read and all that information and stuff. But than it is to watch Jeremy Corbell's documentary and listen to
that dude. That dude's a fucking loser, man. Just my opinion. But fuck, I don't like that guy. He just gives off some fucking bad vibes, man.
Oh God, he's such a phony, man. He says he pretends to be this UFO guy, and he just gives the entire community a wicked bad name. I'm sorry, like I don't understand why people defend him, and they're like, Jeremy's doing good, and he's getting out there and getting on the news and getting into all these big audiences, and I love the people that say, "I like to see you do better." I was like, dude, if I had 5 minutes. Literally, I could pull anything off the top of my head. I could drink a whole 6-pack of beer and pull something out my ass better than he could, on his best day. So, oh God.
Well, I mean, like aliens are like the crack of storytelling. It's the most addictive one for everyone. It's you can't get a better story than aliens. So, I mean. If you're having trouble pushing an alien story, then you're a shit person. But he's obviously doing it because it's such an
bad,
easy
and then he disinforms the whole field. Because like I remember I started researching this, and I was like, "Well, what are these levels?" He mentions 38, 48 levels above top secret. So I'm like, "Well, what are these levels?" So, like I start looking this up and researching it, and it's like, no, that's not how classification works at all in the military. I talked to some people in the military that were experts and in intelligence and stuff, and you start learning about this stuff, and it's like, no, actually top secret, and then there's no above top secret. There's top secret, and then there's what's called SAP, or special access programs, and those are like special classifications, and their need to know and specific to each one of those topics.
So you're telling me there's no Majestic 12 at the top?
At 48 levels above that.
Yeah, 48 levels above that. I think we got to go to the Freemasons before we get the levels. Get all the way up to 33.
33.
Yeah, that's the top. Oh, fuck.
Ahead of the Scottish
you were saying, yeah, that's a whole another topic, that one. You were saying something just before we went into Bob. I can't remember what it was, though. Kind of derailed it there. Sorry.
Then we were talking about the SAPs and the science stuff, and we're done with that Don video, man, because we probably pretty much gone through the whole thing, except for I didn't mention there's a big difference between the electro ion craft, because there's a bunch of craft that work on blowing ions around and doing ion wind effects. But then there's a whole nother thing that they did with lasers, like basically riding light beams. They blast these craft with lasers, and then they eventually figured out a way to, they had a ground-based laser that they would shoot at this target, and then they eventually figured out a way to mount the lasers right on the aircrafts themselves, so they can blast the air with these laser beams, and it will literally push the air out of the way ahead of the craft, so they can go like plus Mach 6 and supersonic up to like Mach 10 by blasting the air out of the way.
I was going to say they did that with a torpedo. I just sent
the super cavitating torpedoes.
Yeah, torpedo. Yeah,
it's a big technology now.
With the water, they can definitely do that with air. I mean, air would be so much easier to do it with.
So he mentions, like, Don talks about, well, there's no experimental, and replications and this and that. Well, Dr. Leek Mirabeau from NASA has a whole book on this, and he's done decades of research into this for NASA, and I don't know who else he's working for, but he can't even talk until 2027 or something ridiculous. He's still under like gag order, but. Fuck. His book's available. It's not even available in the States anymore. It's available in Canada, but it's LEIKMYRABO, Lake Marabou. But that's the super cavitating torpedo, man. And this is all technology that's super related.
Yeah, it's all linked, man. Yeah,
it's all linked.
As soon as you get military level, it's all part of the same fucking group. But
no, well, this not quite. They have different labs. They have different subject matter experts, and they'll bring in a subject matter expert to give some expertise on like some or to solve some equations or do some formula for them. But they won't even tell them like what it is for, or what it's like really related to, or what it's working on. But then that goes to this other lab where they're like, all right, well, this is, now for our engineers so that we have a thing to just plug in numbers to, and we can do calculations now. We didn't have to sit and figure out that formula and that equation. That went off to some other. So it's compartmentalized, and I'm starting to learn a lot more about how it's structured through, digging into it, and how these conferences happen where they have people like from the public will come and present their ideas and throw ideas against the wall, and then DARPA will come, scoop people up out of those conferences and be like, hey, we'll give you a contract to develop this. And that's kind of like how it goes a lot of these times. So it gives people out there an idea if they want to get into this kind of research or these kind of programs, where to start and, where to start going. And
would you ever go join DARPA?
I don't think that's really my approach because I'm kind of like, I kind of play this guy who's pushing for like disclosure and getting the truth out and stuff, and that's kind of my goal. And they don't really like people like that, working too close to the Pentagon's brain and figuring out, because I'm like, I have my own imagination and stuff and my own skills, so I don't think that they'd ever, but I wouldn't mind being like in a managerial role at some sort of organization that picks that hires people and manages like research, different types of research and stuff. I think I'd be good at something like that, but it would have to be, it'd have to be private industry and not related to defense, because I really would like to see it used for plowshares and not swords. If you get the swords to plowshares reference.
I don't know. Where's that from?
It's I guess it's a saying, but I remember it was like a magic card back in the day. It would turn all your. It was like something you could play that would turn all your. I forget what it did in the game. I'm sorry, it's been so long. But the whole idea of swords to plowshares is that you take all the weapons and you turn them into tools and things for the the citizenry and stuff. And that was kind of there's a reference, I believe it's what happened in ancient Japan for a period of time. I think it was Japan. For a period of time, there was like they outlawed all the weapons, so it was illegal to own swords. For regular people to own swords. So they had to train their armies with just common things. So that's where sais and nunchucks and bow staff and all those other like common, things that they could use. They trained with those as weapons because they weren't legally allowed to have swords. So it was like, I don't know. So there's this whole thing about but then they were attacked. If you're attacked when you don't have, if your citizenry is not armed, then you're more vulnerable to attack. And I don't know. I can't get into it. It's too much for me right now. But
I think I know what you're getting at though.
But I'm just want this to be benefit to all humanity. I don't want this to only be something that the military has. I want everyone to have access to, great technology potentially that we could, change the world with. Especially if it's energy technologies and stuff like that, which is a whole nother side of this, cold fusion and all that crap.
That was something I was going to ask you. Like, if you were a betting person, right, you got $1,000. Is the government working on anti-gravity right now? Like how, like we hear all the alien stories. We know like they got Hangar 18, they got all that shit. But how strongly do you believe that they're actually working on it, and how far along do you think they are in that process? Do you think they have it, or do you think they're still trying to get to it?
Well,
the American government, I should say.
again, there's like that whole distinction of anti-gravity versus like exotic propulsion techs, because there's a lot of they are working on, there's DARPA contracts out right now for different propulsion things. They're investigating M drive, they're investigating a lot of these different propulsion concepts right now. There's money that they're pouring into this, because if it does work, it's valuable to them at least. So I think they are working on this. I think but I don't think it's to the. I mean, obviously that the whole Sal Pays thing was something. He was a scientist that had this idea, and the Navy hired him to do some experiments and stuff, even if it didn't work and it was based on bad science. And they were, did it. I don't know. There's weird things to say about that, because it also could be that some of the science was close to it, but it was changed around on purpose so that it wouldn't work, so that it could be discredited by the physics community. So there's definitely evidence that they're working on it, right? I don't know that there's for me to guess that there's more beyond what we know. I would say probably there usually is. I'd say if I was a betting man, I would definitely bet on that. And you're still muted, Finn.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Just from the couple of people I've had on so far, Stephen Kinzer, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he did like a deep dive into like Gottlieb and what the Dallas brothers were doing in the 50s and 60s. And yeah, it's like the amount of secret operations they had going, and
right,
just full fucking, unlimited money, just go do whatever the fuck you want to do. And
if I can think it up, they can think it up, man. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I'm one man. I'm not an intelligence agency.
Which is sus in its own. But like just having infinite money in the 50s and 60s, and the shit they were doing. I mean, it's 2020 now. Like, what the fuck? Like 2021, but it's the 20s. It's like, how many fucking years later is this? And where the fuck are they now? We'd have no idea. And like you're saying, as the people are getting older now, we're only just having those people come forward now because of, they're getting old, they're getting near the end, so they want to kind of get out what they've done. Because it's been secret their entire lives. It's like we genuinely won't know unless there's like someone that hacks in, but I doubt that's.
That's what it says. The journalism, and nobody's doing the journalism because everyone's afraid of getting killed, and so it's like. And they're afraid of like what could happen because there's all these crazy stories out there. But I doubt most of those stories are true, man, because dude, they would have killed me a long time ago. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You're just not looking into
just
Clintons.
paranoid.
I think the Clinton stories are real.
Yeah, if I was looking into the Clintons, dude, that's a different story,
Yeah, whole different story. You'd probably shoot yourself in the back of the head twice, like a couple
Epstein, pedophile rings.
Oh, man.
Start digging into those people.
So Epstein, from what I've been reading lately, he was heavily involved in MIT and Harvard and all these universities and giving them like hundreds of thousands of dollars. The guy, the science advisor that Biden just elected, he's been receiving donations from Epstein for years. And there's photos of them together. And it's like, what the fuck? How the fuck is this guy linked? So, I mean, there's definitely all this secret funding and shit going on. There can't not be.
I think some of it was also the hand of a certain foreign intelligence agency that was, had its tentacles in a lot of different places, and he's just one of many operatives of that, force. So,
if another thing, not just the government you'd be going up against if this was correct, and they are doing this, is the oil industries and the industries that exist now that profit off the energy sources that we have now. Not only would the government be kind of doing this as well, but surely like BP or the oil companies would also
years ago
as well.
More of the oil suppliers, it's more like the Saudi Arabia government who's sitting on those trillions of dollars of untapped resources and reserves that, they're like, oh, our future wealth depends on this sort of stuff. But at the same time, they realize that it's not going to last forever. And if we don't start working soon on some solutions, it's not going to be worth. What's the point? What's the point of having all the money in the world? If it's all going to go to if it's all going to hit the fan,
if there's no world left, the money is not.
Yeah, if there's no world left to, enjoy, there's no. I'm sorry. It's just they realize. I think they realize, we have to go. We're going somewhere. We have to go, off this planet at some point. There has to be, people like, a catalyst for change. That's what I am. I'm just a guy who wants serious change and wants to. And it's done by secrecy, man. All this stuff's been held. We've been held back. Our true future, we should have had it a long time ago, I feel. But we've been held back again by guys like this who say they're not taking it seriously, and they're saying it's irresponsible, but they're not looking into it. They're doing irresponsible research and then offering a 1 million euro prize like that after we succeed, if that means anything.
Yeah. They're really not interested. I would stand to reason though, and I'm no one high up, so I would have no way of proving this, but it would stand to reason that people in the energy industry would be looking into this. Like, surely there'd be some sort of money that's being assigned to this every year for people to research it. But yet you look around and you don't see any signs of that happening at all. Like, there's not really any evidence that that's occurring. It's just the same oil and stuff like that being used now. Even solar, they're not even trying to push that hard, which is ridiculous because solar is so much fucking better in almost every way. Not always, but in the vast majority of ways. So it's very strange to me that they would want to keep that going, because even if you had this, let's call it alternate propulsion, so we're not calling it antimatter or anti-gravity or whatever, that's easily $1 trillion industry. Easily. So why the fuck would they not be looking into it? Like, surely this would be a thing that they'd be spending time on, but they're not. I don't understand that. I don't fathom it unless, I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
These aerospace companies, are looking into it. They had that Project Grasp was their version of Boeing was looking into the Podkletnov effect at Boeing Phantom Works for years. And, there's some things going on with this behind the scenes, and it's tricky to say like where we're at posturing worldwide, and what's coming out with it. It's really confusing when the Pentagon's coming out and trying to say that this is, there's no way these are drones and we have the technology to shoot down drones. And, I'm just not buying it because haven't seen like, I've never seen anything like what they're talking about. The stuff that they're putting out there can be described in other ways. And it's almost like they're running counterintelligence to distract from programs. Because it's weird because you have Lou Elizondo and George Knapp. Like, Lou Elizondo's got like all of UFO Twitter in his pocket. I get very few people on my side when I'm talking against the guy. And I just I want to be skeptical of him. I want to take that role of, let's question what this guy says. He worked for counterintelligence. Let's not, I know he puts out some good stuff from time to time, but so don't the disinformation agents. And this guy's I don't know, he's got all the red flags for me, and everyone from TTSA has from the beginning, because I'm people are like, oh, this guy's super red pilled, because I don't believe anything that's in the mainstream media. I say if it's in the mainstream media and being put out there on guys like Joe Rogan, he got bought out by Spotify. It's very controlled. There's a reason that Bob Lazar is on there, and you look at the effect that it's having, and that's the reason, because they don't want smart people waking up to this. They want the smart people to think it's all crazy, and they want all the people that do believe in this to discredit themselves by looking crazy. It's and they take this stuff, they'll take the bait, and that's kind of why I stand on the side that I am, because I'm really trying to. My target audience is the scientific community. I could care less what Jeremy Corbell's fans think of me. I'm concerned with Don Lincoln's at Fermi Labs putting out videos trashing me to the physics community, because that's not good, and that's not right. And so that's where I stand on that this whole thing, man. And then Elizondo, he's a counterintelligence guy. He says that, he puts out this tweet that says that George Knapp retweeted, and it's got like it's the most liked tweet on UFO Twitter right now, I believe, like in the last 48 hours anyway, the most likes on it. And it's basically Lou saying that we have the technology, like, and there's no way that these are drones, and anyone saying this is ridiculous. But you're not talking about the drone technology still. Still not talking about these advanced, you have all these guys that came out like Steve Justice and all these Air Force people, supposedly all these scientists that were going to declassify and disclose all this stuff. They haven't said squat about the technologies. They're all like, this is aliens and we don't know what it is, and it's aliens. And it's like, these people are just eating it up and buying it. Like, and it's very scary, because it's like, it just shows you the level of the control they have over the narrative. And if they want people to believe this, then that's what people are going to believe. And they're very good at putting those messages out there and getting these things done. And none of it is done. None of the stuff that you see in the mainstream is an accident. I mean, it's an accident when guys like me make it out there, on Tim Pool, like when I was on Timcast, and like, all of a sudden, got out to too many people watching that. It was, I don't know. I might go back on there again, hopefully, and keep schooling those guys on UFOs and aliens. Again, Ian's a good friend of mine, and I keep sending him all the updated information. So he's up on stuff to bring up on Tim Pool anyways, even if I'm not on there all the time to do it. But it's cool when this stuff it kind of breaks out of the underground, because they've shadow banned my channel, and kind of like, I used to be very searchable. I used to be able to find my stuff quite easily with searching for this stuff, but not so much anymore. They've really done a good job to eliminate it.
Did that happen more after Tim Pool as well, or was it like you noticed it beforehand as well?
Oh, it happened after the adpocalypse, and that it was really like a couple years back when that they changed the whole algorithms. I forget what it was, around a couple different events that had happened. We mentioned it was like the adpocalypse was really like the start of it, and they really switched around the algorithms, and I had to take down a lot of my conspiracy theory kind of content and focus more on like aliens and science and stuff, to kind of stay away from those types of filters and stuff, because you really have to watch your content and what you say and stuff. But again, I've always talked about those kinds of things, but I'm always like skeptical. It's like, well, we're open-minded and we're skeptical of this stuff. It's information and it's out there. It's like, you can't just censor everything all the time. I mean, you could try, but it's just going to move to another platform or so. Again, I hope that the people at YouTube at least watch my videos and kind of understand that, even if I'm talking about these things, I'm not like sitting here promoting, telling people that they should question the scientists who say the Earth's round.
No, I don't think anyone is going to get that from watching your channel at all. You can see that you actually care about trying to figure out what the science is and if these things are possible or not. And if they are, how do we achieve them? So I think what you're doing is actually spawning, especially children coming up now, children who are living on YouTube. As soon as they start discovering your channel, you're going to impact their lives. And a lot of them are going to dedicate their lives to either going to work for DARPA or going to work for some of these companies that are doing that. So if it all come to work for you as well. So who knows? But you're definitely inspiring a lot of people, especially children coming up now as well. I don't want to kind of keep switching back and forth between topics, but I was wondering, because I got a lot of people, a lot of my friends who are watching this, who love like alien shit. Like I was saying before, it's literally like the crack of stories. It's so addictive because you hear it and you're like, oh, aliens, and it opens up this whole world and you just want to find out more and more and more. So I was just wondering, because this is the most known one. It's the most talked about and stuff. I was just wondering if you could talk about Roswell and kind of if you think that was real, if you think what you think actually happened there. Because I've heard rumors that it was the balloons they sent up, that they were trying to hear and listen out for nuclear explosions done by Russia and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering, or even, Russian bodies sent over in a plane to, distract America and do like a psyops thing. I was wondering if you could kind of break that down and give your opinion on it, because you seem to be more well rehearsed in that than anyone else I've ever seen on YouTube. And you got a very level head. So when you talk, you actually come across like you're very knowledgeable in it, but you also know, where the traps are and where to fall into it and stuff. So I think you're kind of looking at it from a very good standpoint where you can question it and figure out what's true and false. And I think your opinion on it would be brilliant.
Dug into a lot of it. I haven't sort of talking to all the, witnesses and stuff. I know my friend Steve Cambion, he runs a channel called Truth Seekers, and he interviewed, Don Schmidt and a bunch of the other guys that have written books about Roswell, including Cal Korff, who was, one of the original researchers with Stan Friedman. And then Cal Korff's, again, one of the skeptics who thinks that, he believes the Air Force report in 94, that it was Mogul and Project Mogul, and that all these weather balloon stories were kind of just, some kind of misinterpretation and exaggerate, or over exaggeration. And a lot of it was the part of this one guy, Marcel, who, he claims was a storyteller and made up this stories about the indestructible alien metals. And, but there's a lot of other people that reported those kinds of metals and stuff. And then it's hard to say if they, of course, the excuse is that they always, they heard these stories from other people and just repeated them or made it up after the fact to sell books or draw tourism to the town of Roswell, or, any host of stories. So like the debunkers go all, this one way, and then the researchers, like Don Schmidt, who actually went and tracked down witnesses and talked to people and got stories from people, he tells these stories about, like these witnesses that he tracked down, and then they tell these incredible stories. They said, my family member told me this before he died. And, these people never tried to sell the story. They never reached out. He went and tracked them down and then found them, and they reluctantly gave the stories out. And he said there's so many of them that he tracked down that, like, admitted, or he got like real positive information out of them that said like this was a real event and it did happen. And so it's like, who do you believe with this? And there's no solid evidence anywhere or a piece of this stuff that supposedly, all these people looked at and handled that was this memory foil metal with, and the closest thing I could find that was anything near that material is that metallic glass. It's not mylar. It's not, it's not a metamaterial or quasi-crystal, but this metallic glass is, was a pretty interesting. Yeah, these people lying, on their deathbed, telling their families this, that you're not going to lie to your kids on your deathbed. And, like the last thing you tell them before you die is that, like, look, I saw a body, like you saw this stuff. You're not going to lie about that to people. It's just, there's a lot of people that testified to this. There's a lot more witnesses than they really try to minimize it. And then there's all these fake witnesses that came out that did try to get attention off the case, that did try to sell fake stories and stuff. And the debunkers will always highlight those and use those as like, oh, well, all the witnesses can be discredited because we found a few fake ones. Right. So it's really difficult. It's a really difficult.
That's a classic
case.
CIA tactic, that one.
These are all intelligence tactics. So if you were trying, the point is that why did the Roswell Army Airfield release that report to the newspaper saying that they recovered a flying saucer? Where was that communication that messed? How did they get from weather balloons? If this was just a weather balloon, how did they get from weather balloons to that press release?
It's quite strange, yeah. And there was one thing as well that you were saying before, the compartmentalization. So there is the possibility that there was it was so compartmentalized, this mogul, which I kind of believe, but at the same time, it's like they wouldn't be releasing this. You're completely right. They would not release that to the papers. There's a big difference between a fucking balloon and an alien saucer. Like, that is two completely different looking things.
Yeah.
Also, I think as well, they flew it on two separate planes back to the Air Force Base. Is that right?
I don't know all. I don't have all the flight logs and the logistic. I haven't done that like detailed the research. Of course, you know, it was very easy to have a flight that you just wasn't in the log, or the logs were erased, you know, too. So it's like, how do you really know exactly what happened there? And I know that there was witnesses that said that, you know, this was the bomb pit where the atomic bombs were loaded into the bombers in World War II, you know, and they said that they had this kind of, I don't know what you call it, but it was like this accordion thing of these walls that came up to kind of like block off the vision with these canvas tarps that would come up. And they said that like those came up when they loaded the whole plane from this bomb pit, and that the plane took off and went from, and that I know that Marcel flew it in that plane to with another pilot. I don't know all the details of this now because it's not have it all right in front of me, but they flew that plane to Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. And when they got to Texas, there was a press release there, like everything was waiting for. He said that he was brought right into General Ramey's office. The weather balloon was already in there, and that the plane went and continued on to Wright-Patterson, but he gave the press conference there, or like the cargo was switched out to another plane that went on to Wright-Patterson. But it went to, not Wright-Patterson, it went to Fort Worth, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, it went to Fort Worth, Texas, not Dallas. So it was in Fort Worth at the where the General Ramey's office was. And that's when they had that press release. That's where all the pictures are of them holding the weather balloon. And apparently that wasn't the real material. Both the guys that testified to it were there, so that wasn't the original material. They said there was a switch. There was some other material that they were shown and trying to identify, and it was not a weather balloon and radar target. So
and then to Wright-Patterson.
And the real stuff apparently went on to Wright-Patterson, which is, you know, where the material command was, and the head of the Air Force. That's like the first Air Force. So the Eighth Air Force, the Eighth Air Force was in Fort Worth, and I think the first Air Force. This was pre-Air Force too, by the way. It was a couple months before. It was a week before the Air Force was created. Air Force was created on July 10th. Roswell was like July 4th and 5th, or the 5th or 6th. It's arguable. It's like about the 5th or 6th, but they can't really nail down the exact date it was. So, but that it doesn't mean that the Air Force was created because of Roswell. It would have had to been in the works a long time before that. But there was the National Security Act, the start of the national security state. All that stuff happened right around Roswell, right after Roswell. So it's kind of it goes kind of with the era, though. There was, if Roswell was real, then it was part of this wave of UFO activity that followed the first detonation of the atomic bomb and the world's first atomic weapon. And you know, there's some arguments that sent out, you know, a signal to the whole universe. You know, when you create that, you know, nuclear chain reaction, it sends out a frequency of radiation. It's quite signature. There's nothing else that produces that frequency, and it's a big red flag to every intelligent civilization out there in the universe with a radar telescope pointed out into the airwaves that say, "Boom! Oh, we got a hit." You know, so
they've reached it.
Yeah,
it's very strange how, like, you can actually look at the stats and you can actually see like a massive uptick in UFO reports right after the first nuclear explosion, which is very interesting. But it could also be like an increase in technology of us being able to communicate and get stories out there.
In 2014, the CIA published an article that said it was us, where they declassified all the U-2 flight logs. So all the U-2 spy plane flight logs, they said that a lot of these UFO sightings was these high altitude U-2s, which they're up so high they're reflecting the sun even though it's dark out, and they're flying around, and they said they matched the flight logs with the actual sightings, and or something. You know, how do you know it's the same thing that these people saw though? Or there could have been a lot of U-2 flights that could have overlapped, and I don't know how thorough it was. I didn't really do too much research to look into it to really to dig into it, but I'm sure someone could. But yeah, right after we split the atom, a lot of them started showing up, but there was also a lot of technology that appeared right around that time, and they also appeared before then, because we hadn't split the atom yet, but there were those Foo Fighters in World War IIs that harassed German and American fighter pilots, and British fighter pilots reported the Foo Fighters too. So that predates those events. And then, then there's that story about the alien that crashed in Texas, and there's other weird, UFO and alien stories that predate, Roswell. So it's not like they just started showing up then and really came around then, but it certainly got a wave of attention. And I don't know. It's hard to say, because there is a lot of technology that started appearing around that time too. So it's.
I think it caused so much interest because it was like, oh, the army is now saying that not only was it an alien sighting, but they've also got the alien debris. I think that's what it was that kind of separated it from the Foo Fighters and all the other reports, is because it went from this sighting to actually physically having the evidence of it. So I think that was what kind of jump-started, or at least got everyone interested in the story. To jump quite a bit forward to this Colonel Fravor, I can't remember his name, Fravor, the Air Force pilot who saw the Tic Tac
Commander.
Commander. Fravor, right. Yeah. What do you think about that one? Like, I've seen a couple of things now where there's like reports of like subs releasing like balloons into the atmosphere to throw off like Russian radars and stuff like that. Do you think it was something like that? Or?
So yeah, well, TD Barnes, I was saying, though, I was mentioning all the technologies that could explain it beforehand, right? I was one of the first people to be like, well, it could be aliens, but there's a lot of technologies we ought to like be aware of and be considering and talking about before we, jump to these conclusions. And a lot of these guys like ignore that stuff, or would, say that's silly to think that this could do that. And, because I talked for a period of time, some of these witnesses were on Twitter for a while, and I would communicate with a few of those guys. And they weren't convinced. They didn't convince me either way. I didn't convince them. It was kind of like a stalemate with the technology stuff and trying to explain that to them. But with there's a channel of the Nimitz Encounters, and there's I mentioned a couple different other witnesses that are worth talking to, not just Commander Fravor who witnessed those things, because there are technologies that would explain these things. And I was talking about Project Palladium as one of them. And some of these other technologies, and then it turns out that they asked,
what's Palladium?
Palladium was that balloons, the balloons. They would fake the radar out by floating a balloon, and then they'd pop the balloon and inflate another one somewhere else, so it looked like it teleported really fast, and ways of making, faking the radar out into thinking that there were these, things going super, super fast. And if they did them in an array, they could make the thing look like it just covered, 600 nautical miles in half a second, and that would really screw with the enemy and be like, what are they doing out there? So there's when TD Barnes, right? So TD Barnes is the head of the Area 51 Roadrunners Association, and he's one of the head. He was a head CIA technology technician out there. So he was involved in a lot of secret programs at Area 51 for a period of about 30 years. And he's retired now and can talk about a lot of the stuff because it's declassified. So they asked him about this whole thing. And he said, Project Palladium and Project Nemesis, it looks a lot like these, war game technologies and these spoofing technologies that we can use to create, illusions of these enemies, a fighter, we can, an enemy fleet, create, fake radar games. There's a whole variety of technologies where they can fake radar data. They can fake out ships, radar systems. They can create objects in the air. They have microwave auditory effect where they can create auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations with shapes. And one of the easiest shapes to create in the air is a Tic Tac shape, believe it or not, minus the appendages. Those appendages are kind of weird. That they'd be a little hard to create, but the Tic Tac shape would, it's just a sphere would probably be one of the easiest, and then you just elongate that and you get a Tic Tac. So there's a lot of other things that people aren't talking about and considering, and they're just complete omissions from the technical conversation anywhere that people are having about this. And then instead the technical conversation is the Bob Lazar stuff, and it just discredits the whole community in the eyes of the scientists, as we saw with the video. And I don't know what the game is that's being played, man. It's if they're pushing for disclosure and transparency of what are they pushing for? It's not the technology. It's I don't know. I don't get it, man. It's very confusing.
I think it's because there's not just one game being played. There's like levels on levels on levels. When I was talking with Kinza,
it's almost like they're testing. A lot of it's just testing the public to see how well the mind control works and how
It's very possible. Very possible. Yeah, the one point that Kinza made to me about the mind games that they're testing is that when they were trying to come up with, I don't know if anyone's seen this, everyone go watch the episode when I had Kinza on, but they were trying to get mind control. They were trying to create a Manchurian Candidate. And the reason they were doing that is because they were seeing it in the movies and they were scared that the Russians, says the CIA was scared the Russians were coming up with some sort of mind control where they could create this Manchurian Candidate. And for that fear, that is why they started the secret mind control programs where they'd start kidnapping people and then dosing them with acid for, 70 plus days straight just to see what it do you. And then it turns out, when it shut down, who knows?
Whitey Bulger, they were experimenting on Alcatraz prisoners.
Yeah.
And he was one of the prisoners he talks about it. And oh man, I was like, I had no idea. That's crazy. They said they had locked him in the solitary confinement and gave him ungodly amounts of acid. Drove him absolutely insane.
Grams at a time. Grams. It's like, I can't even fathom what the fuck that would be doing to your brain. But one of the points he was making is that they kind of looped it on themselves because they were so scared that the Russians were making this technology. They were trying to do it. And what ended up happening is that they caused more harm to themselves and to the populace of America than the Russians ever did with the mind control stuff, because they were just never working on it. It was never a thing that they were doing. So I think what's happening here, and that was all top secret too. None of that stuff was known. So it kind of feels like that's what might be happening here with the Tic Tac, is because they're sending up these balloons because they're scared the Russians are going to discover something. So they're trying to disillusion them with setting off these balloons and making it look like there's something traveling along on the radar. But in fact, what it's actually doing is backfiring on the Americans more, because now everyone sees the Tic Tac. Captain Fravor comes forward, tells his story, and now that's just convinced everyone, as opposed to just convincing, the people watching the radar, the Russians watching the radar. Instead of tricking them, it's now tricked the entire populace of the planet. So it's one of those things that's kind of backfired. It's like,
you think it's almost like they did it. I had this whole theory that they were running war games. The Air Force was running war games on the Navy, and that these Navy pilots and Navy personnel saw this, didn't know what it was, didn't have the clearance or the need to know anything about it, and that they're now using it as a there's a couple different games I feel like they're being played, right? So remember TTSA came out, and then they had this app that they were promoting for a while that people were going to download and start reporting their UFO sightings on this app, and I don't know whatever happened to that, if it ever became a thing or blew up or did anything, but I immediately was like, oh, all these Air Force, all these things are going to go right to the Air Force. This is a great way for like civilian, monitoring of the airspace, for people to report UFO. They're reporting drones, but they're reporting UFOs, but they don't really know that they're not getting scared to know like all about this crazy drone technology. We're not going to freak them out too bad. We're just going to tell them that they're seeing UFOs, and then we're going to keep an eye on what they're seeing and who's reporting it with this app. And I don't know. It's kind of like there's multiple games being played on multiple fields, but they're also seeing what they can get away with the public's perception. Like how many people would believe this was aliens if we tested this out on them? And then Stephen Greer's coming out, and he was warning everybody. He was on Alex Jones the other day too about the New World Order and now it's the fake alien invasion. It's a fake alien invasion. That's what's coming. That's what they're planning. And, hey, it might be. Maybe they're testing us for that, and they're going to pull it, Well,
that's what Werner was talking about, Von Braun, the fucking creator of NASA. He talked about that very strongly,
Who do you think he got that from? I thought it was like, this sounds like Rand Corporation think tanks, he was affiliated with a lot of those think. It's the think tanks, man. Nah, because he was involved on think tanks. But think about it, right? So Rand had all these think tanks going on around the same time. They would have clearly brought like scientists in to kind of sit on these boards and pick their brains on this stuff. And he would have picked up some things from those think tanks. And that's where I think he got that from. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. I'd love to find more information on the kinds of people he went to those meetings with, and to see if Robert McNamara was Robert McNamara one of those names by chance, But
imagine made a fly on the wall for that. God damn, that would have been some interesting conversations.
Oh God, no man, I'm sure, but stuff. I just thought that whole thing, the whole thing about Roswell, man. Do you think that they're going to come out with a report and and admit to this alien debris? And
no way, no fucking way, man.
I can't wait to see what's going to be in that task force report and what they're going to put out.
It's going to, what it's going to be. It's just going to be paperwork mumbo jumbo. It's just going to be legalese after legalese. Oh yeah, we tried this and that, and nothing happened. It's going to be a dead piece of paper.
Well, the other thing too is that they're propping it up already in the mainstream media to make it like, oh, we just watched a bunch of Jeremy Corbell's Pyramid Triangle UFO videos and these debriefings, and we became fully informed on the state of what our intelligence agencies are currently doing with it. It's just going to be like this show that's like it's already set up in the public sphere, and then they're just going to come out with this friggin' report that's going to be like, I don't know, it's going to keep those Jeremy Corbell fans busy for, 2 months or 3 months or what, in the next couple of months or whatever. It's gonna be enough to like throw them a bone and keep them, fighting amongst each other while we continue the real work. That's kind of way I feel. This is not over. We're going to be doing this for quite a while until we get disclosure and the truth out. They're not going to admit nothing. If they're going to admit to anything though, it might be Roswell. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. Because if they admit that, then it kind of opens up how much else have they been lying about, which they'll never do, man.
Then it's going to be like, all right, all bets are off, man. Bigfoot, 9/11, let's go. Like JFK.
Man.
Come on, let's see.
Would be opened up straight away. JFK would be opened up straight away.
Oh, yeah, it'll be over, man. They'll be done.
Man. Yeah.
I'd be sitting there dancing. I'd be dancing on the internet like, I told you so. I told you so.
Cheney would be coming out being like, don't look into 9/11, everyone. Rumsfeld would be like, oh, don't worry about it. It's all good, guys.
We investigated ourselves.
Yeah. Even though the guy who wrote the report came out and said, the report was bullshit. But, don't pay attention to that. That, not to go down that rabbit hole. But, there was another thing. Let's keep it on the alien stuff. The Harvard professor, Avi, coming forward about, is it Muamua? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Muamua, yeah.
Muamua. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great that the head of Harvard's astronomy program is, put himself out there like that. And, it's going to take more people like that to break these stigmas in order, to make progress in science. I think there's a lot to say about what he did and how it's changed, a lot of people's views. So, even Eric Weinstein tweeted the other day, he said, I've ignored the UFO topic for years, but now with all these, with all my colleagues and intelligence people and everything else coming out, I can't ignore it anymore. I have to kind of step in and say something and do something, So that's where I come in like, all right, hey, here's 16 years of research, man. I've been here waiting, anytime you're ready.
So what do you think Oumuamua was? Do you think that was something from alien civilization, or do you think it was some sort of asteroid or meteor, or, well, I suppose not a meteor, but some sort of, just random rock going through space?
It would be, I think that, it's definitely a call for the need for more optical devices in space, like more satellites and more, because the problem is that the thing came and we didn't have the right angle on it. We didn't have the right resolution. And we couldn't get a good picture of it. You know what I mean? And so we don't know what it is. And it kind of came and it went, and now it's gone. And, it's like we had our window and we had our shot. So I think like what we got to do is get better sensors and better technology out so that the next time something like that happens, we're already so blind to the majority of the sky and what happens out there. We need more eyes in the sky to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Even
watching what's happening here,
even more eyes to watch. Yes. And then I mentioned about another technology called quantum radar, which is not well known about or talked about, but it's a way to see. It's they use entangled photons so that you can see that if the entanglement's broken, then your radar signal it could show evidence of I don't know why I'm yawning, man. I'm like tired. It's also really hot in here for some reason, and the heat's blaring. I want to open this window.
I won't keep you too much longer than if you want this much. I'll let you go soon. I'll ask a couple more questions if that's all right. Have you got another 5 minutes?
Yeah, let me get a couple more questions in, because I don't know what Oumuamua was, but again, it just shows that like we need better data, we need better instrumentation to like look out for these things and be watching these things. And it certainly was an interesting and peculiar visitor. If you read the paper on it and all the things about it that are, and the anomalies, it's kind of certainly draws some questions. And I think Avi's doing a great job with emboldening other physicists and scientists to come, to that you're not going to get, a couple of your colleagues might beat you up or say, some nasty things or something, but we're here for you, man. The community supports you.
Yeah. Well, you're always going to catch flack, regardless of what it was. I mean, any scientist in history you can name, they caught flack for their fucking ideas. So, I mean, it's just one of those things you got to do. But it's interesting that it is someone from Harvard, the head of the astrology department, is the
astronomy.
Yeah.
No, not astrology. Not astrology.
Astronomy. No, but
astronomy.
Sorry, man. Sorry, everyone.
This is science we're talking about. Not Sagittarius.
What star signs?
Oh my God! You got to edit that out. He's gonna be.
Nah, I'm gonna leave it in there.
Well, at least the alien scientist, said something. All right, saved you. I saved you.
Yeah, thank God. There's a question I got from a couple of the boys in the Navy at the moment, so shout out if you guys are watching. They want to know. I'll read it word for word here. What the fuck is Area 51? I was wondering if you could comment a bit on what they do there, what it is.
So there's a whole bunch of areas out in the old Nevada test site. The Nevada test site is set up in the 1950s as a testing ground for nuclear weapons for the United States Department of Atomic Energy. It was the Atomic Energy Commission, the AOC, and the so the Department of Energy. So these were all like areas that were, and then they picked Area 51, and they changed it to Area 51 because there's no Area 50 or 49 or 48. It's not like sequential. There's just they just wanted a number that was so far out and far away from everything that it was just kind of out of the ordinary. But that was the it was the site of this old called the Groom Mine. It was a mine that was used to be there, an old prospector shack and stuff that still actually was there on site in part of the base. That's what it used to be, and then they claimed they needed a real flat, dry lake bed to use for an airstrip because they wanted to build like a really long 9-mile airstrip for in case they needed to land, these experimental craft at really, really high speeds from space. They had a lot of
shit.
It was
what year was this?
Area 51. I think it was the late 50s that or early 60s that it was first developed. Let me just get this. So I know that the ox cart program was the first. It was built in 1955, so mid 1950s, and the ox cart or the A12 program was the one of the first programs. It was the first flight was in 62, so it was obviously it was obviously starting during those mid 1950s, and this was during the time of the you want me to show my screen? I'll show some cool pictures.
Yeah. Share screen.
Let me just get some 1 second. Back up.
Needing a runway that long in 1955 for space vehicles. I mean, holy shit. That's insane. That's insane.
So let me show you this. This you'll find this pretty cool.
The A12, yeah.
So the A12, right? So here's a picture of inside an aircraft assembly hangar at Area 51. So this is inside one of the hangars at Area 51, a real photograph.
How the fuck did you get this?
This is Ed Fouché.
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
This is the landing. Wow. So they could they actually take the wings off this thing and take the rear rear stabilizer off, and they could package it up in this and they could load it onto a C-124, right like this. And that way they could fly it anywhere in the world. And they're actually flying into Atsugi Air Force Base in Japan, where they'd run these operations over the Soviet Union out of Japan at Atsugi, and that's where they'd load this thing off. They'd load this thing off, put it into a hangar at Atsugi, and then wait till nighttime to start flying it out of there. And this is one of the high altitude chamber tests that they did for the pilots, because this thing would fly at really high altitude for over the Soviet Union. You can see the NACA. See the on the tail section.
Yeah.
If you zoom in really small, you can't read it out, but it's the symbol. That symbol is the NACA. That's the National Aviation Commission on Aeronautics, or whatever it is. It's the precursor to NASA. It's the secret space program, basically. So, you can see it better here.
Yeah.
NACA. It's definitely the same thing. So this is what's on the U-2 spy plane from Groom Lake. Here's them building the thing. Crap. Yeah, these are historic photos, man, of them building the whole thing.
Goddamn. I've never seen these before.
I don't think anyone has, to be honest. I've never released them until now. I think they're out there somewhere. You could probably find these, honestly, if someone's seen this. People have seen these before publicly. I'm just trying to make it seem. There it is. I'm trying to make it seem a little more special for you, Finn. But this is
that's quite dope.
The old school Jeep. Look at that, man.
Yeah,
So yeah, this was the 40s, like and then in the mid 50s they started working on the replacement for it, and that was the A12 or the ox cart program, and it was called ox cart because that's at the old Groom mine. There was an abandoned ox cart that was sitting there at the Groom mine at Area 51 or Watertown where they did all this stuff, right?
No way.
Yeah, so that's why it got called Project Ox Cart, because of the ox cart from the mine at Groom Lake, where they were building all this stuff and doing all this research. There's another inside the hangar. Yeah, so they that A12 and that SR-70, the precursor to the SR-71 Blackbird, also had a supersonic missile on the top that they could launch, and it would go like suborbital and collect data up, and that was called the D-21 or I think it's called D-21 drone. Yeah, the D-21 drone. My computer's slow as hell, so it's going to take forever to load. What's going on?
Oh, the Nissan.
Not that. This is the Lockheed D-21. Shit. There we go. Yeah, so they had this little reconnaissance drone. And this thing
in 1964.
64.
They had a drone. Holy fuck. They had a supersonic drone in 1964.
You believe it?
I mean, I believe it, but it makes
I
me
used
scared
to fly on top. And the G.I. Joe plane used to have this. The Blackbird G.I. Joe plane used to have the detachable thing on top, the mini aircraft. But you could fly in it. The guy could actually fly in it. But this was an unmanned vehicle, the actual one.
Holy fuck, man! Holy crap! So that thing had just come off, and to be controlled from on the ground.
Yep.
Holy crap! Holy shit! Holy shit! Well, that makes me think that the Tic Tac is probably some sort of drone now.
Well, yeah. So you talk about those missiles, and those super cavitating missiles, and these. Yeah. It's part of this. I believe it's part of the Star Wars defense program, and that it's some type of anti-ballistic missile drone that can fly around and take out missiles and stuff. There's also that. Did you know about that? The UP UAV? Did you ever see that video?
No.
The MP UAV. Did I ever show you? You watch my video with that. So the oh, you can't even find it now. We know it's multi-purpose UAV. Here it is. So this thing. Oh yeah. You're looking for craft that go in and out of the subs. They launch them out of the subs, and then it's got these missile things that look like the little Tic Tacs that it fires. It actually has missiles that look like little Tic Tacs that it fires. Interesting stuff, but
Skunkworks, yeah, of course it's Skunkworks.
Yeah.
2012 concept. Oh yeah, that fits in.
Yeah, it's right.
2004, the spotting was
14. They're already developing it. Then they probably testing it out in 2014. Mimits Encounters. This is that good article by The Drive. They cover all that Aurora. The Aurora project and the Lake Marabou stuff and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm beginning to think that maybe that rotating mercury plasma kind of stuff was a distraction, because it looks like that Aurora craft really did work on some of this type of technology. And it's interesting, we also found out the one of the things that Ed Fouché had mentioned is that Buckley Air Force Base is where they did a lot of these experiments, right? So we looked up Buckley Air Force Base, and guess where Buckley Air Force Base is? It's in Aurora, Colorado.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, we made that connection. It's just a coincidence, though. Just like the ox cart, right?
Yeah, exactly. Holy fuck.
Yeah, so I thought that was super cool. But
that is cool, man.
God, there's so much.
Yeah, we can go on for hours.
Was even though we find out these little details, man, imagine there's so much we don't know. Like the guys who actually worked on this stuff and know, like, I just wish they would talk and wish they could come out. And, maybe in another couple of years, you guys will come on APEC and join us. So
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. I was going to say, so you've started APEC now, which is basically where you're getting everyone together that's involved in this kind of stuff and getting them to come forward and talk about it.
Yeah, so if you go to American Anti-Gravity on YouTube, right? So American Anti-Gravity. This is Tim Ventura. He's one of the guys that got me into this with his site, American Anti-Gravity, AmericanAntiGravity.com back in the day. And he's just a great guy. He's a good moderator and a good, level-headed dude. And he's just like, when we kind of had this whole idea for a conference. We were talking to Tim Ventura at the time, and we said, Tim, you ought to like. It was really mostly Tim Ventura's idea, and it stemmed from the Estes Park conference and the fact that we had that Estes Park conference via Zoom because of COVID. And when that happened, we were like, we could have all these conferences and we just host our own conference, but Tim Ventura is the man for that. He's really a great host, and it's really his conference that he, it wouldn't be the same without him. But again, I have a much bigger audience and a much bigger subscriber base. And
11,000. What the fuck? How does it only have 11,000?
I know, but it's how do I only have 100,000, man? It should be a lot more, but anyways, it's not the point. It's the integrity. Yeah. It's the quality of the people that we do have following us, because there's some really amazing people in the group. And Tim's a good host for the conference and stuff. And I just, there are some weird stuff that gets mixed up and some,
Yeah, that's inevitable.
But that's inevitable, and you're just gonna have to sort through. You have to sort through it at all and take what you will.
Yeah, when you're on the fringe of this kind of stuff, you're always going to find it. Can you load up APEC for everyone to see that? Because I'm not too sure my audience would know what that is.
If you go to altpropulsion.com, this is the website for APEC. It's altpropulsion.com, and you can go to events to find out information about upcoming conferences and events. You can see here the past events too, and go look up a past event if you want to check it out. But the APEC is the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference, and we basically have a bunch of physicists and engineers, and we invite people who want to talk about anti-gravity ideas on to present them into our group, and we give them constructive criticism and ask questions. And it's just a fun time, and we invite guys like Don Lincoln to come on and, present to our group about anti-gravity,
What's some of the most compelling stuff you've had so far on this?
So that Richard Van, I like the Project Green Glow, or learning about the Ron Evans and the research that was done by BAE Aerospace and the UK government. That was interesting. We had guys
what were they doing
they were doing a variety of experiments related to light, using light for propulsion and different types of there was a bunch. So Green Glow, you have to watch his whole presentation from Ron Evans and stuff, but he gives, he talks about the whole history of the UK research into this. It goes back to Eric Lathwaite in the 80s and 70s and stuff, and he really gives a good background on the history of the anti-gravity research that was done in the UK, and the books that were written on it, the British Aerospace Studies, the Starter Project Green Glow. It's all in here if you watch. I don't want to ruin it for everybody because it's good stuff. Yeah. I almost should do like a summary, like a spoiler summary of like all the best of APEC, and kind of like do like a clip of everything so far to give people like a taste of the best bits. But I liked my favorite one so far was I really liked when Jack Sarfati and David Chester of quantum gravity research came on and talked about warp drives and Einstein's field equations and relativity, because that was like the most deep physics that we've ever gotten into. A lot of the stuff's more like, and a lot of it's really like engineering based and theoretical based, but that one, I mean, like not more like more engineering than theoretical, but that one was more like super like deep science theory, and it was good. And I really liked Richard Bandurik's presentation and Eric Hermanson at the end of this one right here, APEC number the December 5th one, and then the one after that on December 12th was really good with Gary Stevenson. His is like one of my favorites. So they're all pretty good, but those are probably my favorite ones of all time. And Dr. Mike McCulloch, of course, his was actually one of the best. Maybe Mike McCulloch and Benjamin Solomon was also good, and Ron Kita. So these they're all pretty good. There's not been one where I was like, there's been maybe one or two that was like a little disappointing. But other than that, this one and this one maybe my least two most disappointing. But I won't get into any names or anything. So, anyways, I thought that was super interesting. It's all super interesting stuff. But you're right. I should go back over it all and make like a highlights reel for and because that it seems to be a lot. They're like they're 6-hour conferences. Nobody has. A lot of people don't have time to sit through all that, so it's like I really should do like a summary. That would be key. But yeah, man. Any other questions? Because I do want to get going here, man.
I'm good with that, man. I do have a few, but I don't really want to keep you, so maybe we'll arrange it later time or something like that. But no, thank you so much for coming on, man. I think you've woken up a lot of people. Hopefully, a couple of my fans that are watching will do something with it. Come over to your channel and watch a few. Maybe even inspire them. A couple of them have kids at the moment, so I think their kids seeing your kind of conferences and talks and stuff would definitely trigger them to kind of follow that path and kind of go down that. So I think what you're doing is awesome, man. I think it's going to benefit a lot of people.
Hey, if I can get one kid to say I'm going to become a scientist, like Avi Loeb said, my job's complete. That's all that matters.
Exactly, man. Well, I think your channel is definitely going to do that, man. Definitely. If it hasn't,
I hope
already,
so. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it would have. Yeah.
Sure. I know. Well, I believe me. I've got a couple. I've been around over 10 years, and I've had a couple people that have hit me up when they graduate, and they say, "Thank you. I just graduated my degree, and you partly inspired me to do it. And thank you for that. That I appreciate that. When I get an email like that, it means a lot to me. So
that's got to be a pretty good feeling, man.
It is, man. It's like, damn, it's like making a difference. I am.
Yeah. So. In other people, that's fantastic, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Shout
it was great meeting you, man.
YouTube as well. Alien Scientist. Yeah, no, been meaning to do this for a while, and just things kept happening. So yeah.
We'll get back on again. We'll get back on again, and you get some more questions, and we'll pick a topic we can jam on. And do you want me to share this to my channel? We'll talk after. Go
for it. I'll end the broadcast, but stay on. Alrighty, catch us all
later.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in.